got a jam-packed show for you today, Who Dat Nation. Let's talk about some free agency rumors and two targets specifically that I think that the Saints could benefit from at least kicking the tires on. Slot cornerback Bradley Roby, who has spent some time with the black and gold before, and Calais Campbell, the defensive lineman, the journeyman, who is an extremely seasoned veteran, but still puts up really good production and has experience in the NFC South. But before we dive into all of that and then some, I want you guys to go ahead and hit me up on social media and subscribe to the channel because we're going to be getting a lot more news, especially tomorrow, Saints fans. Media will be back at OTAs tomorrow, and we're going to be getting all sorts of updates, news, takeaways, all sorts of stuff on social media, and I'm going to be retweeting, I'm going to be posting my thoughts, sharing a lot of content throughout that process, so be sure to hit me up on social media, and of course, we're going to be live tomorrow afternoon to discuss everything from OTAs and our Madden Sim for the Saints vs. Eagles game, so be sure to check us out tomorrow during our live show, Wednesday, 4 p.m. Subscribe, and then hit me up on social media. The links are in the comment section and description of this video. Let's kick it off with Bradley Roby. The slot cornerback specialist, I think, could be somebody that the Saints should at least give a call. He is still available in free agency, and I think that when you take a look at what the Saints have done with Alontae Taylor, it's been okay, but I'm not necessarily sold on the fact that the Saints are not confident, but I think that they could use a safety blanket and an insurance policy, if you will. Now, let's take a stroll down memory lane and revisit what happened with Roby last year. He was a surprise cut candidate after he lost the slot cornerback battle in training camp and in OTAs to Alontae Taylor, which is why Taylor is the starting slot corner. He did sign with Philadelphia last year. He logged 344 snaps on a pretty, loaded and talented Eagles defense that does have some nice cornerback and defensive back depth specifically. But I want to talk about Bradley Roby because I think the contract would be inexpensive. And on top of that, I think that he could fill a little bit, not a huge void, but a small one for the New Orleans Saints in their current roster. And here's what the snap alignment was last year for Roby. He logged 289 snaps in the slot position. He lined up in the box 30 times, the corner on the outside 16 times, and he actually lined up on the defensive line in the trenches 8 different times for the Philadelphia Eagles. And now when you compare the two cornerbacks, the two slot cornerbacks specifically, here's what the production was. Now, I chose Bradley Roby's 2022 numbers because that was the last time he was truly a starter at the slot position. And you can see the production on your screen. But in 2023, he had 9 games played, 22 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, 1 forced fumble, no pass breakups or interceptions. And I will say Alontae Taylor had some very high highs. He had some very low lows. And he was benched twice this season, but responded really well by logging interceptions in both of those, or not in both those games, but he responded well by getting an interception the following game, and then after being benched in Week 18 against the Falcons, logged an interception in that same matchup. Now, I will say for me, I'm going to roll with Alontae Taylor. I mean, it would be nice to kick the tires on Bradley Roby, and I don't think it would be a bad idea to at least give him a call, but if you ask me what the positions of need are for the New Orleans Saints, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's slot cornerback, in an insurance policy. I'd rather go get a safety. I'd rather add another offensive lineman. And I do think that Alontae Taylor is one of the best press cornerbacks in the entire NFL, and I think that his stock is only rising. And Doug Farrar over at Touchdown Wire has a lot of really good content. He actually put out an article a few weeks ago or a handful of days ago discussing, the top press corners in the league, and he named Alontae Taylor as one of the top 10. Said that last season, Taylor was in press 150 of his 976 snaps, and he allowed 12 catches on 27 targets for 5.4 yards per play, 3 explosive plays, no touchdowns, which is a really, really nice thing, and 1 interception. And again, that 1 interception came in Week 17 against the Bucs when he was lined up in the slot. The following week, in Week 18, he logged an interception against the Falcons, but that was when he was lined up on the outside, so just wanted to add some clarity there. But I want to ask you this question, because here at Chat Sports, we like to encourage audience interaction. This isn't just me talking at you. This is us having a conversation. Which slot cornerback would you rather roll with in 2024? Rather bring back Bradley Roby or let number one absolutely cook? I'm rolling with Alontae Taylor. I shared my thoughts, but it's your turn to sound off and share yours as well. And here I want to share what Dennis Allen, the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, said about Alontae Taylor, because I think that he brings up some good points. And honestly, I wanted to share this again. This isn't the first time I've put this quote on screen, and I want to show you guys. I think it's really telling when Dennis Allen is saying this kind of stuff, and I think that he is a really good coach at developing defensive backs and bringing the best out of his DBs. He said that let's not forget that Taylor is a second-year player, and it's his first year playing inside the slot, referring to last season. There's some learning that goes along with that. I think he'll be much better and much further along this upcoming season. He's getting that work now in the spring as opposed to the limited work he got in training camp last year when he was battling Bradley Roby and ultimately won. And I'll say this, I am a big fan of Alontae Taylor, and I'm a big advocate, and I think that this guy is just dripping in aura. I mean, he plays with so much swagger, so much confidence, and his attitude and the mindset that he plays with is extremely contagious. And I think that when the Saints defense is at its best, you have multiple players with that same attitude, with that same swagger, that same confidence that's walking around. You command the field because you're the shit and you don't stink. And that's one thing that I love about Alontae Taylor, that this guy just does not give up. He is not afraid to line up against any team's wide receiver one. He's going to give him a run for the money. He's going to talk that shit, and he's going to lock them the F down. Sometimes he plays bad, but he did lock down a lot of top wide receivers in his 2-year stint in the NFL so far. Now, coming up, I want to discuss, should the Saints sign Calais Campbell? I mean, the defensive line, they added to it with Chase Young, no doubt about it, but it was pretty lackluster last year. And I think that the Saints defensive line needs to be better in 2024 if we want to see the black and gold back in the postseason. So I'm going to discuss, could Calais Campbell offer that to the Saints? But before we dive into that, got to give a big-time shout-out to Fanatics for sponsoring today's video. And if you're like me, where you're sitting here saying, oh, snap, Father's Day is just around the corner, I forgot to get my dad a gift. Well, we got you covered. Don't you worry about it. Click the link in the comment section, the description of this video, or visit chatsports.com/SaintsDad, and you can get him this #1 dad shirt. They also got coffee mugs, hats, all sorts of cool stuff on the website. And if you use our link, you can get anything on the website that Fanatics has to offer. So go get yourself or your dad some gear for Father's Day. Chatsports.com/SaintsDad. The link is in the comment section, description of this video. So finally, to wrap up today's conversation, it's a Tuesday. Bear with me. Does the defensive line need to add one more piece? I think we should start this conversation off by at least addressing what the defensive line looks like. I think right now this is what the starting defensive line will shake out to be. Maybe you could swap out Colin Saunders for Brian Brzee, but I think that the Saints, honestly, now that I'm sitting here looking at it, I think Brian Brzee would be the starter. So I'm going to roll with Brzee starting over Saunders, but I think Saunders does still have value as a run-stopping defensive tackle. Nathan Shepard was pretty talented last year. He did offer some nice juice to the defensive line, but Chase Young, for me, does unseat Cameron Jordan. I love Cam. He is a great player and a Saints legend. There's no doubt about it. However, the production was down last year, and that's something that you cannot ignore. Tano Passanio, he has an injury. The Saints did also bring in a handful of UDFAs like Trajan Jeffcoat, Nathan Latu. And on top of that, you do also have a guy in Peyton Turner where there's still a lot of unknown, and Isaiah Foskey, who you drafted in the second round in 2023 out of Notre Dame. And just in case you'd missed this chat stat a couple days ago, New Orleans was tied for 28th in sack production in 2023, which was really, really bad. They had 34 sacks. If you wanted to even be in the top 10, you needed 48. The #1 team was the Baltimore Ravens. They had 60. I mean, that's unbelievable. You had 34 sacks, and you have players that are damn good, that are really talented. But I do think that some age is a factor. I think that coaching was a factor. I think that the lack of offensive production was also a factor. And I do think that New Orleans added some juice by bringing in Chase Young. I mean, he was a former first-round pick, #2 overall, if I remember correctly, 25 tackles, 7.5 sacks, and obviously there's the discussion of, Is he still the player that he once was coming out of Ohio State? Is he that guy? Does he have that high motor? Does he have the effort? Can he stay healthy? Those are a lot of questions that are fair, but I think we should at least consider could be, put to rest this regular season. Chase Young's playing for a lot of money. There's a lot in terms of what he's trying to prove, not just to himself, but the rest of the league, because he probably wants another contract after this year. The Saints only have him on a one-year deal. So I'm sure that Chase Young is playing for long-term money and long-term assets. So that is why I believe Chase Young is going to have a good season and add a lot of juice to the Saints' pass rush. And I want to ask you this question before we get to Calais Campbell. How many sacks for Chase Young in 2024? You think it's going to be more than 7.5? Do you think that he's going to be the leading sack artist for the Saints? I want to hear what you guys have to say, because when you take a look at what the sack production was for the Black and Gold last year, they had 34 total sacks, and Carl Granderson was the number one leader for sack production. So could Chase Young dethrone and unseat Carl Granderson for the top sack production? Maybe, but I also think that Demario Davis, he could log a few sacks. I expect Brian Brzee to take a step. I could see him logging anywhere from 5 to 6. I could see Nathan Shepard getting at least 1 or 2. Tano Passanio, that's a big-time loss because you're missing him in the rotation, and he was a top 5 sack artist for the Saints last year. Now, Cam Jordan, I think, is going to take a step up. I think last year was a little bit of an anomaly. I think he is going to have more sacks this upcoming season, but I don't think it's going to be by a ton. Maybe he gets 4, 5, 6. And I think if you can get 5 or 6 sacks out of Cam Jordan, that is really, really good. And Isaiah Foskey, I want to see him, just like Dennis Allen said, cut it loose. You got to see what he can do. He has such a high motor. He plays with so much energy, and he is a talented football player. He's just got to hone it in and perfect that craft so he can be productive at the NFL level. Now, it's worth noting that New Orleans only has about $5.5 million in cap money to spend right now. And that's that's not tied. That is 30th in the NFL. So third to last, you have virtually no money to spend, which, whatever, that's just how the cookie crumbles when you play this kick the can down the road game. And you're also over $80 million over the cap next year. So there is a route of, should we just save this money, roll it over to next year, and try and kill some of that cap in 2025? I could be convinced of that, but I also could be convinced that the Saints want to go, or not want to, could go and add a defensive pass rusher. But I will say this, Carl Granderson knows that the spotlight is on him this year, and that he needs to be more consistent. And I think that this quote is very telling. Granderson's saying that the middle of the season for me was kind of like you hit a wall, and then you turn it up when it's too late. So moving forward to this season, I expect my production to start off hot, and in the middle, keep it going, and then towards the end, crank it up even more. And Granderson did start off really hot. He had a lot of production. He had like 4.5 sacks in the first 4 or 5 games. He was really, really good, taking the league by storm and making his name heard as an undrafted free agent. Really, really good stuff. However, there was that lull in the middle of the season, and then he did turn it up. So I think Calais Campbell, maybe he is an option. I don't think he's going to cost you a ton of money because he is so old, because all you need him to do is just come in on passing downs and be a sack artist. Or you could also line him up on the defensive interior and let him be a defensive tackle and let him try and stop the run or try and pressure the quarterback up the middle. I think Calais Campbell is a solid option. I think that there is a role for him, but I also am not necessarily convinced that the Saints need another pass rusher. I think that you could go and get one. It would be nice, but I also think that what you have is pretty solid, and you can get by with what you have and honestly get better production than what we saw last year. And my final thought on Calais Campbell, I don't think he's going to add speed. I think that's what New Orleans is looking for this year. They want to be faster. They want to be grittier. They want to be tougher. They want to be more athletic. And Calais Campbell isn't going to add speed and athleticism to your defense. But he will add experience. He will add toughness. He will add grittiness. And I do think that he could be a solid rotational and situational player. I don't think you need him to play 3 or 4 downs every single time he goes on the field. Maybe he gets 5 to 10 snaps a game. You have him log a handful, just create that pressure, be a good veteran presence. Maybe that is an option, and you could pay him the veteran minimum of like $1.2 million. So I want you to be the GM. Final time I'm going to have you interact with me, Saints fans. Would you sign Calais Campbell? Type sign, type pass in the comment section. Let me know what you think. And as always, y'all stay golden. We'll see you tomorrow for our live show.